Gentlemen, episode 36. Congratulations, you've gotten this far. I also have something else to inform you guys of. We are officially in the 1,000 Play Club. Our podcast has officially hit 1,000 downloads. So congrats on that. Also want to welcome Canada and France to the listeners, because those are the two new regions that popped up this week.
Woohoo!
Hey,
We
Welcome, eh?
as well as Singapore.
We.
Yeah.
Singapore.
Yeah.
interesting.
We talk
Okay.
about World Series. I don't know. Where's Choi from?
It's a good question.
I think he's Korea, but close enough,
Yeah.
right?
Also, a reminder to check out the website 3starrecruits.com for all our blogs, sports betting blogs, and daily fantasy. DraftKings is absolutely killing it right now. That is ridiculous what's been going on there. So be sure to tune into that. Check out the other podcast, DFS Units, Sunday mornings for those updates. Mike didn't make it this week because he got hungover and drunk at a Halloween party. So just be sure to read his blog. What else do we have here? And yeah, follow us on Twitter at 3-Star Recruits, the number 3. Come hang out, interact with us. Sometimes I tweet and it looks like I'm drunk. I've been sober for a month. Either way, it's fun. So let's get started. Do you guys want to start with the UFC fight, or do you want to start with NFL?
Go UFC.
All right.
Okay, whatever.
So Khabib wins. And go ahead. I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this. I know Russ watched the fight. Did you watch the fight, Adam?
I did not.
Did you watch Taylor?
I watched highlights.
Okay. So Russ, how about you kick us off with your thoughts on the fight? Fights, plural.
Fights. All right, we can run through the list, I guess. Well, one of them's one of my stars, but not this one. I thought the first fight that Magomed Ankalaev, so he knocked out Ian Kutalaba. They fought earlier in the year,
Yeah,
and ended in a controversial stoppage. So they've been jawing at each other for quite a while. And that Ankalaev won very decisively, knocked him out. Second round, I think.
yeah.
No, first round.
Was it first round?
Late first round, yeah. That one was rather impressive. Then women's fight, Lauren Murphy beat Lily Shakarova by submission. The Shakarova, they were hyping her up as one of the next up-and-coming prospects.
From Uzbekistan.
Yes.
If you guys
Didn't
missed
really-
that fight, by the way, she looked like Justin Bieber with black hair.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
one of
she
the
did.
Beatles fresh off the boat.
But where it mattered in the octagon, she didn't show up. So Murphy won that with a nice submission. The next one, Phil Hawes making his UFC debut at middleweight. And he had an 18-second knockout over Jacob Malkoun. They replayed the whole fight because it was only 18 seconds. And Hawes literally did not get hit once in that fight. So that was fun to watch. Alexander Volkov won by TKO over Walt Harris. Harris, we've talked about him before. He's gone through some personal struggles with his stepdaughter, that whole murder situation. He's one of those good guys just keep rooting for, and he's struggling to put together wins here at heavyweight. Didn't he fight at light heavyweight before?
Possibly, yeah.
Been? Either way, I think that's at least 2 losses in a row for him.
It is 2 in a row. He hasn't won since everything happened.
Yeah. So the Whitaker Cannonier fight, and nothing too overly exciting in that fight for me. It's somewhat boring. Whitaker did win by decision. That was the only fight on the main card that went to the judges. And then the big one, So Khabib Nurmagomedov won in submission, triangle choke over Gaethje. I don't know. He continues to impress me. Nurmagomedov does. It doesn't seem to matter what type of opponent you throw at him. Guys that they think will be good at wrestling, might counter his ability on the mat. Or Gaethje's known for his striking. He could probably be a pure boxer and be pretty good at it. And we've seen a couple strikers against Nurmagomedov, and it doesn't seem to matter. The guy just finds a way to win. And I know Gaethje was throwing some leg kicks that he had one, I think he stumbled a little bit that led to the takedown, which is what it is. You got to give Khabib credit for taking advantage of that. But man, once Khabib gets you on the ground, he is just nearly impossible to beat. Nearly impossible to survive, I should say.
It only took him one mission attempt.
Yeah. I mean, he had him down. He got
Yeah,
Gaethje down at the end of the first round, but there's only about 20 seconds left when he got him down. And if that had happened with a minute or instead of 20 seconds, it probably would have been over in the first round. To me, he's an animal. And the big news, obviously, he retired right after the fight. So he goes out at 29-0.
Were you surprised by that at all?
So I hadn't. Yes, I was. You had mentioned he kind of hinted at it earlier in the week, which I missed that. I didn't hear any of that. So, yeah, he's still relatively young. I think he's 31-ish, and he's clearly still at the top of his game. I thought, without knowing that he had hinted at it, I thought he would stick around for a little while, or at least try to get to 30-0. 30. I know it's only one fight, but 29-0 versus 30-0, to me, there's somewhat of a big difference there when you're looking at somebody's overall record. To get 30 MMA wins without a loss would have been crazy. So, yeah, I was a little surprised by that. But.
So I wasn't. I guess I didn't expect it, but when he announced it, I saw him start to take off the gloves, and I'm like, he's going to throw these in the middle of the ring.
Yeah. Yep.
And then when he did it, I was like, I guess I kind of see it. He comes from a different culture than all of us are used to.
Yeah.
The whole like Dagestan and Russia and stuff. And yeah, I guess I'll never quite understand it. I understand your father died, and I'm not going to try to understand it. I'm not going to question it. I'm not going to question his religion or his beliefs. For us, it's extremely weird. I mean, if one of our parents died, I wouldn't quit my job if that was my job. And I understand you fought and you grew up doing with your dad. It was so in that part, it was a lot like, really? I wouldn't also be surprised. I'm not going to say I don't think he's done, but at the same time, if 2 years from now or a year from now we find out he's coming back, it wouldn't shock me either. So to kind of stick with the Khabib thing, I just want to I know we talked last week, and Russ, you thought I didn't really like him. It wasn't so much I didn't like him. I really thought Gaethje was a good matchup. Things that I was surprised with was Gaethje's inability to stop a takedown. I know Khabib is extremely good on the ground, but it looked way too easy and effortless. Because when you watch Khabib wrestle, none of that looks like very technical. It's just wrestling and grappling. And sometimes you'd think, well, if these guys are strong enough, they should be able to counter that, or at least some sort of attempt to counter it or stuff a takedown. And it just looked like it was effortless. And yeah, when he landed that leg kick, that was what was impressive to me. He almost knocked Khabib on his ass with that leg kick and then went straight into a takedown. Khabib, I think at that point was starting to feel his leg kicks in his knee because the leg was getting red, and he'd stumbled a couple times and he took a couple of those shots. So that was impressive to me that he went from literally almost falling on his ass on a leg kick to into a takedown, and the match was over. I don't know if you guys heard this earlier this week. I think it was yesterday. Khabib had said that he heard earlier this week that Gaethje had mentioned that he would never tap. You could put him in. He's like, I'm not going to tap at all. He had him in an armbar and took it straight to a triangle choke because he said he didn't want to hurt Gaethje in front of his parents who were in the crowd, because he knew that he heard that Gaethje said he wasn't going to tap. So he knew if he put him in the triangle, he would just choke him out. He'd go to sleep and he'd be fine. because you don't
Right.
want to hurt him. Because the only way you got that without tapping an armbar is that your arm breaks.
Yeah.
So the guy's level of jiu-jitsu when he's underground is clearly higher than most people think outside of his grappling. It was impressive. So my next question to all of you is the conversation this week has been Khabib is the greatest of all time. And I want your honest opinions of whether or not you think Khabib is the greatest of all time, the GOAT, whatever you want to call it. And then I'll give you my take on it.
Before we get into that, did you think Gaethje did tap before he went out? I thought he submitted.
He tapped
I
twice.
thought he tapped. Yeah, that's what I thought.
I was a little pissed off at the ref. I mean, it's fine. It's whatever. But he tapped twice right in front of the ref. I don't know if he was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt.
I was kind of wondering what the ref was looking at there, I should say.
Yeah, because he clearly tapped like twice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You guys go ahead with the GOAT question. I'll get to that after.
Well, two things first. One, the fight went basically how I thought it would, except a lot faster. Second, whenever I hear retiring and fighting, it seems like such a loose term. It's almost like I'm taking a sabbatical. Like I think there's no doubt that we will see Khabib again. It's just a matter of when. The question of GOAT, I think, comes down to if that comeback happens. I think we need to see that comeback. We need to see more out of him than what we have. What that might be is open to interpretation. Is it going to a different weight? Is it waiting for another top contender to come along to go and defend against? Because I just think that what we've seen out of him isn't enough of a challenge. We haven't seen enough close fights to say he really was put to the test here. And I think to be the greatest of all time, you have to be put to the test. There has to be someone that's a really top contender that gets him close so we can see what he's like. Because I think he keeps getting fights, and even if they're great fighters, maybe they're not their best performances, because it seems like every time, even when he's against a top level fighter, we have this second round submission. I mean, a week ago, you guys were, I don't know whose team you were all on, but I don't think that you would have predicted Gaethje to be over that fast. You would have thought it'd come down to the wire. So that's my only thing on the GOAT talk.
So
Yeah, obviously I don't watch MMA as much as you guys do. Just looking at, obviously, if you look at records and stuff, he's obviously got to be in the debate. I don't, like I said, I don't know enough about MMA to know if he truly is the greatest of all time, but I'm guessing he's got to be top 3. And yeah, I don't know. I guess I expected, I was glad he won me some money with a parlay, but the end of it, but
Won Mike a shitload of money.
So I had a 4 match, I guess, or however you want to say it, parlay, and won it with Khabib winning at the end. But so I mean, yeah, I don't know. At least I don't watch MMA enough to give you whether he's the GOAT or not, but I think he's definitely got to be in the debate, top 3 or so.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, Taylor, with the, he hasn't been dragged to the deep waters to see what he does there.
We haven't seen him on his back close to submission. We haven't seen him almost get knocked out. It's just
right.
Until that
You could also kind of argue the flip side of that his last 3 fights with Gaethje, Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier, these were all guys that many people thought would take him down. And yet in those 3 fights, he didn't allow them to even get close to it. But to me, John Jones is still the greatest fighter of all time. It's not Khabib. I would put George St. Pierre second. And then that 3 through 5th, to me, you could kind of throw whatever order you want with Anderson Silva, Stipe Miocic, and then Khabib. He's the dude's 29-0. I don't think he's, even before MMA, he's probably never lost a fight in his life in any shape or form. So is he in the conversation? Absolutely. Is he better than John Jones? No. Especially when you look at their UFC record and title defenses. So I still put John Jones first, GSP second, and then Khabib is in that 3rd through 5th conversation, in my opinion.
So I agree with Russ 100% here. I tried looking into some of this stuff before we got on here. I think it's hard to crown someone the GOAT in MMA, considering it's hard to do it in any sport, but when you start to do it in MMA, when you have weight classes where guys will never fight each other,
Yes.
and then you can go back generations, then you're going to have guys who can say, well, GSP was the greatest. You might even hear some say Matt Hughes was one of the greatest.
Mhm.
Jose Aldo, one of the greatest. Had Jose Aldo just turned around and retired before fighting Conor, we're having the same type of conversation we're having about Khabib. I think the Khabib conversation, it's fresh in our mind. He's 29-0. Khabib has 13 fights in the UFC. So yes, I will not take away from the undefeated record, but only 13 fights in the UFC is not that great of a feat, I guess, considering some of these guys have, 30 some fights in the UFC.
Yeah.
I have seen a lot of social media this week about John, and I'm not being biased here because we're John Jones fans. A lot in the media about giving John a hard time about him criticizing the GOAT conversation. John's got a legitimate argument here, and for a few reasons. Like I said, Khabib's only got 13 fights in UFC, 4 title defenses. And some rebuttal to that argument was, well, he didn't get a title shot. Well, that was Khabib's problem because he chose not to fight. Khabib always put Ramadan ahead of fighting, even though I believe you can look it up. I believe Ramadan's April to May. It's right around that time. It's a month. He always used that as a reason that I'm not fighting during Ramadan, but he also has multiple fights in April. He just chose not to fight. So if you just don't want to fight and you don't have the title, Dana's not going to give you a title shot. And the reason you don't have a title shot is because you have 13 fights in UFC now. So you've had, before the 13, he had 9? Somewhere in there. You have 9 fights in the UFC, 8 fights before you started talking title shot. And then at that time, you got guys like Tony Ferguson going on 12 fight win streaks who are lobbying for a match. You had guys like Conor McGregor. The whole division was congested there. He had no fights in 2015, and he was technically on the UFC roster. He won the belt by beating Al Iaquinta in a 5-round decision, and Iaquinta was a day before decision because Ferguson got hurt or couldn't fight. I believe it was Tony who got hurt. So he filled into the fight, and then that's how that started. My argument is Silva. Anderson Silva, I mean, he has not been his last 8 fights, 1 win, 6 losses, 1 no contest. What if Silva walks away after he breaks his leg? We're talking about Anderson Silva being the greatest of all time. We're not talking about how he never came back from that and was never the same.
And those 7 fights were after he broke his leg?
Yep, 8 fights.
So when I think of Silva in the greatest of all time debate, I pretty much ignore the last 4 years.
Exactly.
Because he is he's got to be 41, 42 years old now.
Which,
to
by
me,
the
he's
way,
kind of he's in that category of guys that are fighting for the love of the sport, not because he's still an elite talent at his age. I mean, he was the middleweight champ from 2006 to 2013 or something like that.
He had the most title defenses until John broke that record.
Yeah.
Broke or tied it, one of the two.
Yeah. So to me, when I think about the greatest of all time kind of debates, I think you got to look at truly their prime and how unbeatable they were in their prime.
And I think you're onto something when you say we didn't see enough of him. We didn't see enough of him in the UFC. And that was kind of his choice as well. He could have fought more. He just didn't.
I think once you bring up someone like John Jones or Anderson Silva, and then you compare them to Khabib, the dominance might be sort of parallel. But when you think about John Jones, you don't just think about grappling and you don't just think about striking.
Skill set.
He's so great at both. He's so well-rounded. But when you say Khabib, you don't think striking. You think grappling. And I think to be that GOAT conversation, you have to be well-rounded.
There was some other stuff.
Maybe that's a defense I was thinking.
There was other shit mentioned this week on social media, like, well, talking about John, and John, the people were arguing with John, like, oh, you failed the drug test or you got DWI. It reminds me of like the Heisman debate. We don't award the Heisman based on ethics, which is the biggest crock of shit ever when they strip it from somebody. We don't crown somebody the greatest of all time at whether it be at any sport based on them serving soup at a soup kitchen or some stuff they did off the field. They had other awards for that. When we talk about guys getting in the ring, we're talking about their skill set in the ring. I think all of us would say Tyson probably might be considered one of the greatest heavyweights of all time. You want to talk about not having a clean record, right? I mean, there's a great example. I mean, he's no saint. And I mean, Russ, you'll appreciate this. I mean, John tweeted earlier something about, guys that Khabib hadn't really fought. And he does have, to a degree, as a point. His last few fights have been very well-known people. But I look back at John's run from 2011 to 2013 when he cleaned out the division. He beat Cormier, Rashad Evans, who Rashad Evans was the man to beat because he knocked out Chuck Liddell, who was at the time unbeatable. Rampage Jackson, who said, I'm going to smoke this kid. And then after the fight said, I'm in the best shape of my life. That kid's the real deal after he got choked out. He beat Gustafson now twice in his career. He's beaten DC twice in his career. He beat Shogun Rua in his prime. He beat Machida. He choked him out standing up when they thought Machida was the man who was going to beat John. And then he beat Ryan Bader, who is yet to be heard from because he fights at Bellator, and I think he's a champ over there now. But when he beat Ryan Bader was 12-0 and was fighting for the belt. And then he come back and cleaned out the division again when he beat DC and he beat Gus and beat those guys. As far as Khabib being the GOAT, I'll never crown it. I'm not going to take it away from him. I agree with Taylor. We didn't see enough. He might be one of the greatest on the ground we'll ever see. But as far as the GOAT, I don't think I can crown anybody. I still think if you had to, gun to my head, pick somebody, balls to the fire, it's John, just because of what he did. And even his one loss shouldn't even be a loss. Yeah. There's just so many other guys out there you could talk about. And then I don't know if you noticed, Cormier put out a list. You'll love this, Ross. Did you see his list?
No.
Cormier's list of greatest of all time. Khabib, GSP, Demetrius Johnson, himself and Cejudo, and then Nunez.
So
how do you put yourself on that list and you lost twice to John?
Yeah. Take that with a big old grain of salt.
Well, if I'm making a list, I'm putting myself on it, I guess.
Sir, and Cejudo. Why is Cejudo on this list? The guy's won 6 fights in the UFC.
Cejudo's a clown. Greatest clowns of all time. That
Did you
list.
see me tweet him the other day? I can't stand him.
Nah.
First of all, his head's too big for his body. And then he posts a video like you're done. You claim you're retired. And he posts a video of him flying on an airplane talking shit to people. It's like, dude, shut the fuck up unless you're gonna get back in the ring and fight. You want to post that stuff? You want to promote a fight? You want to call somebody out because you want to fight? By all means, do that. Social media is there for that platform. You're gonna sit around and talk shit and then not show up and fight? Just shut up. No one cares. Yeah. Like, also, there's a height limit. And you don't meet it, you little midget. So I just can't stand that shit. Like, but Connor's the same way. We hear Connor chirping all the time. It's like, dude, get your ass in the ring then. Like, stop chirping. And you watch. Connor's going to resurface. It's already been talked about. He's going to fight Poirier, which was my next question. Where you guys think the lightweight division is going to go from here? But I knew as soon, like, he chirped a little bit. He gave Khabib his props on his way out the door. But you know damn well that if nothing had been said and Khabib retires, Connor was going to be right there knocking on Dana's door like, hey, I want a title shot. And Connor's currently like 4th in the rankings in that division, and I'm trying to figure out how. His last win was Cowboy Cerrone. So, Ross, where do you think the division goes from here?
Well, yes, I think so. Connor technically retired. But yeah, you've got this talk of him fighting Poirier. They were talking about some sort of charity match, but I think it's now evolved into a legitimate UFC lightweight fight, if I'm understanding that correctly. So you got Connor and Poirier. You've still got Gaethje. Gaethje's still there.
Yep.
Anytime you lose, so we're having this debate about Khabib, greatest of all time. So the fact that we're even mentioning him in that breath if you lose to him like Gaethje does, like Gaethje did, to me that doesn't knock you way down the pedestal because you lost to somebody who's in the argument of greatest fighter ever.
Right.
So Gaethje's still there. And then I haven't done a ton of research on him, but there was this Chandler guy that traveled over there. So forgetting his first name, last name Chandler. He's apparently Michael Chandler, apparently one of the best lightweights in the world, who just recently signed a UFC contract. And he actually traveled over to Fight Island. He went through the weigh-in process, made weight, and he was the emergency fighter in case Khabib or Gaethje got hurt or couldn't fight for any reason. So right now I've got those four fighters on my mind. If McGregor Poirier turns into a legitimate UFC lightweight fight and not a charity exhibition, to me I have those two fight. I have Gaethje and this Chandler guy fight. And then the winners of those two fights fight for the belt, in my opinion. And I would even try to get Gaethje, depending on Gaethje's medical suspensions, if he has any, I would try to get Gaethje and Chandler on that same card as Poirier, McGregor. I think that's end of January, right?
Yeah, and Gaethje mentioned something about he wants to go in like 6 to 8 weeks. And Chandler is literally coming off from, I mean, he just made weight. He just went through a camp, made weight.
Yeah.
So it's not like he needs a full camp. So, I mean, even if you can't get him on that card, do they fight sooner than that just to fight? But I agree with you 100%. I think Gaethje and Chandler, let them fight. Let's see if this kid's worth the hype. Okay. Then, those two, I think you let Poirier and Conor fight for the fight as well. I don't know if you put a belt on that. I don't know if Conor will fight if there's not a belt. I don't know. It's weird. I think you could argue that you could put a title fight on it just because Poirier lost to Khabib, but he's fought since, and he beat the shit out of Dan Hooker, who was supposed to be the real deal. And so he's coming off a win. So I'm fine with that. And Gaethje, like you said, you just lost to quote unquote the greatest in that division. So I think you let Michael Chandler and Gaethje fight. And then the other one I thought of is like take Dan Hooker, let him fight Ferguson. Let's start sorting out this division now that guys are going to fight. Let's see who's going to win, who's going to lose. Let's keep Tony from chirping on Twitter. You can fight Dan Hooker, who's coming off a loss. Ferguson's coming off a loss. Make or break for both of them right there, in my opinion, because Ferguson, he got his ass whipped by Gaethje. So
yeah, that was ugly.
I'd like to see those two coming off a loss. Let those two fight. Kind of throw that in the mix. Maybe throw that on the Conor card. I don't know. I mean, there's that division can start being sorted out now because with Khabib with the belt only fighting once a year, that's not going to help the division because the rest of those guys would fight and sit around and wait.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think Dana mentioned, I might have it wrong, I don't know. I listened to his press conference because somebody asked about Chandler, and he said he needs a couple fights before he'll give him a title shot. Obviously, Dana can change his mind whatever the hell he wants, but he said he needed a couple of fights to get that shot.
I'm not a big fan of a new guy like Chandler coming in and immediately getting a title shot. I will admit that.
Right.
But the reason I don't 100% believe Dana White saying that is had Gaethje got hurt, then Chandler and Khabib would have been fighting for the belt this past weekend.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask. Would they, if Chandler had to step in for Gaethje, would it have been for the belt or would it just been another fight? I don't know how they do that.
No, that absolutely would have been for the belt.
Yep.
You would never have a champ. You would never have a belt holder fight when the belt wasn't on the line.
And if you're Chandler, like Russ and I talked about the other day, you probably got paid a lot of money just to fly 17 hours to make weight. Go through camp, make weight, and you're not stepping in that ring unless it's for the belt.
Yeah.
So is it possible? Is it possible that we see Paul Felder come out? He said back in July that he's not really retired. He's waiting for the fight.
Dude, Paul Felder's a great announcer, and he's been through Paul's been through some wars. He's got a.
It wasn't July is not that far back. He says he's benching himself until he's ready for the right fight. And if they're going to start sorting things out, is the right fight going to come along?
I don't know. I'd have to look and see if he's ever fought, but I could see like a Felder fighting Iaquinta. Iaquinta, though, I saw an interview with him. He's sidelined for a while. You know, he said people have been accusing me of dodging fights. He goes, I'm not dodging fights. I can't fight right now. He had surgery.
So that'd be rank 7 against rank 10 or something like that. So
Quintus hurt. He can't even fight right now. He's not even cleared to fight. So he's like, people accuse me of dodging fights. I'm still technically rehabbing. I haven't been cleared by a doctor to fight. I'd have surgery, a knee surgery or something. So
wasn't that? I'm looking at the rankings right here in front of me. That Charles Oliveira, wasn't he up there for a little bit? Did he get beat then, or is he just not? He just hangs out in the top 5 and that's about it.
Yep, gatekeeper. No, he is. He's a gatekeeper. I mean, he might not ever string along enough wins to be considered a contender, especially who you got up there at the top of that division right now.
Right.
So his Oliveira's last few fights, last was against Kevin Lee, and that was actually at a catch weight, 158 pounds. Jared Gordon, Nick Lentz, David Timer, Jim Miller. I mean, he hasn't fought any. He's on a win streak. I don't
recognize those names, so it's not good.
Yeah, he's on a win streak against a bunch of nobodies. So somebody like that is not up for the title in a really stacked division. This division is clearly one of the more stacked at the top right now than the others. You can't win against a bunch of nobodies and expect a title shot. So
you'll get it sorted out.
No, he's
6-8 months, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought I had something else. Oh, how come no one mentioned Tai Tuivasa? We didn't get to see his shoe.
Yeah, we didn't you got me jacked up for it, and I didn't get to see it.
Well, unfortunately, I wasn't at Fight Island to realize there was no beer in the arena.
No fans, I guess.
You could put water in that, and I would have thrown up.
No, not. And that's why I sent you the video because.
Yeah. That was gross. That's the only fight I watched. But
this weekend, don't forget, depending on where my status is. Speaking of Anderson Silva's last fight is this weekend. He's fighting Uriah Hall. It'll be his last fight. He said he's done after this. Yeah, one of the greatest. And he probably, if he would have hung it up after he broke his leg, no one would have blamed him. So.
Oh God, no. That was one of the worst injuries I've ever seen.
Who's he fighting?
Uriah Hall.
Somebody who, when he came out of the Ultimate Fighter competition, Uriah Hall was kind of tagged as the next greatest ever. Then that did not materialize.
I tell you, I want to see more of is this Phil Hawes.
Yes,
that kid's nasty.
Yes.
I think he's knocked out everybody he's touched. And like Russ said, he didn't even. They said, when do you want to fight again? He's like, I don't know. Whenever we go back to Vegas, which is this week. He literally did not get hit. So yeah,
that's my kind of fight.
One where you don't hit your opponent.
I got nothing.
Let's move on to football. Week 7 in the books. Much better week on my end, betting wise. I put up 2 extra picks, had 7 this week, went 5-2. What are you guys' takeaways from football this week? The goods,
Cowboys
the bads.
suck.
Cowboys do suck. Yep. And then they got worse.
Yeah. I didn't watch a ton of football this weekend other than sleeping through half the Bills game because that was boring. And then watching this.
Dude, six field goals? Come on.
Yeah. Snooze fest. When Bass missed the first field goal of the game, I was ready to text you guys and ask when the hell the Bills were going to look for a new kicker. I don't know. I mean, he scored the only points for the team, right? But at the same time, I still feel like that kid's going to cost us down the stretch.
Missed 2 other field goals.
Yeah. He just does not look steady to me.
Dude, it wasn't good. I was at my friend's house up in Buffalo. There's like 4 of us watching the game, and Kyle texts me. He's like, "Get this guy out of town." I was like, "Oh fuck, guys, he misses it." Because my buddy, I don't know what streaming he's got, but we must spend about 30 seconds behind.
Streaming football like a fucking peasant.
Hey, you gotta do what you gotta do. But it was bad. Halftime, my buddies and I, we went out in the backyard and kicked field goals. They won't be calling me, I'll tell you that.
How big
mean,
is your buddy's backyard?
It's
Well-
probably about
12
35 yards,
yards.
40 yards.
12 yards. Good enough to practice goal line plays.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's a win, right? But man, that game going against the Jets, that game should have been over at halftime.
That should have been a blowout. Yeah.
Yeah.
My big
Dude,
takeaway
I
from
wish.
was it's nice to watch the Patriots lose. It's just, oh, I feel so good in my
How
soul.
bad is Cam Newton? Dude,
Well,
they'll
that's my-
better not blow that this weekend.
I was
If
saying,
they fucking lose this weekend,
we had talked before about who needs who. Does Tom Brady need Bill or does Bill need Tom? Do you guys want to update your thoughts on that? Or?
Belichick needs Brady,
Yeah. I mean,
I
Brady's
never would have thought that. I don't know.
but Brady also has more weapons than they have in New England,
True. But
and he added
Yeah.
one.
yes. Yes, he did. Yeah, the Antonio Brown update. So yeah, he went to Tampa. Apparently, I heard some people saying this was like shitty on Bruce Arians' part, Tampa's coach. He basically told him, "Hey, look, keep your shit together or you're out of here. I want no distractions." And people were like saying that was wrong of Arians come down on him that hard. And
no way.
I completely disagree with those people. I would have told them the same
Yeah.
thing.
It would have been
Look,
the first conversation I had.
You've been a headache the last 4 years everywhere you've gone. If you want to play football, come in and play football. But the first distraction, I'd get rid of your ass. I'd
Yeah.
tell them the same thing.
You started your
do it in
bullshit
Tampa.
with turning down the trade to Buffalo, and then you got frostbite in Oakland. Just that's how it all started.
Dude, and now Tampa's really glad they signed him since Godwin fractured his finger or whatever, so he's
Yeah, I
out a
saw
couple
that
weeks.
today.
So obviously not that they need another weapon, but it'll be interesting to see this weekend. Well, I don't know how much we'll see of them this weekend since they played the Giants Monday night, but so we probably won't see a ton of them. But it'll be interesting how they work together. And obviously Brady and Brown worked together for what, a half? I don't know how long he played in that Miami game when he was in New England, but that was a nightmare.
Yeah, I don't know. Cowboys suck. If I were the Cowboys right now, I'd be on the phone with Miami. I'd be on the phone with Miami saying, "Hey, can I have Fitzpatrick?"
100%. Yes.
Stat guy, look something up for me because I don't
What's
want to look it up. Kirk Cousins' contract in Minnesota. Because I think it's over this year. I mean, not that he's a huge upgrade, but with those weapons, I imagine he's got to be better than what the hell they have now. So
In March, the Vikings and Cousins agreed to a 2-year, $66 million extension. That was
so he got an extension.
October 18th.
I have an inkling in who's going to be gone out of Minnesota, and it's Kyle Rudolph. So what's going on right now in the NFL is the cap is fluctuating. So there's teams out there that have unbelievably a large amount of money over the cap space next year, Minnesota being one of them. So the rumor is Rudolph will be gone. He's like almost $8 million of the cap space next year. The other one I heard was Julio Jones is going to be gone. You don't be surprised if he gets shipped out before the trade deadline, because he's another one in Atlanta that's going to have a ton of cap space.
Is the deadline? The deadline is this week or after this week, correct?
It's close. It's coming up to this week or sometime around that.
So
Yeah, there's a lot of teams.
They're saying a lot of teams that want to make trades, though, are going to do it at least a week earlier, because anybody that's traded has to go through the COVID testing process. And basically, they can't play the first week on their new team. So they're thinking, even though there's a hard deadline in the league, that teams would actually look to try to trade a week or two before that if they think they need help.
Yeah.
So it's next Tuesday.
A week from today.
Yeah.
There was
Week from
already
today.
Cowboys traded somebody today.
That means there'll be a lot of trades tonight.
Yeah. Everson Griffin to Taylor's boys, the Lions.
Yep.
Don't associate me with that dumpster fire.
And they got a W last week because Ty Gurley scored on accident.
Yeah, exactly. Yikes.
Which I don't understand. Like, I get being pissed off that he scored because he left time on the clock. But if your defense goes out and stops him, are we having the conversation? Right?
No.
It's like a minute left in the game.
Yeah, and obviously we saw the same thing, which cost me some money Saturday with Penn State. Penn State ran in that same. We see that maybe like once a year, and we saw it Saturday and Sunday, scoring and instead of just going down and kneeling on the ball and getting the clock gone. And obviously both teams, Atlanta and Penn State, end up losing this weekend because of it. I don't know. So let me ask you guys this, because I don't know if you guys watched the Penn State game. That was one of the craziest endings to a game I've ever seen in my life, because so Penn State scored, went up 8 or whatever. Indiana went down, tied the game, scored, got 2-point conversion. Well, their kicker went to squib it with like 30 seconds left, and he squibbed it 10 yards. Penn State recovers it. So, like, Penn State had a chance at the end of regulation to win it again because the Indiana kicker just basically missed the kick. But so Penn State scored that touchdown to go up by, the touchdown put them up 7. To kick the extra point to go up 8. At that situation, and I texted my buddy this, who's a Penn State fan. I said, why don't you go for 2? Go for 2. Because if you miss it, you're still up 7. If you get it, it's a 2-score game.
Agreed.
Now, that's not saying that, obviously, Indiana, they went to overtime. Indiana went for 2 anyways to win it. So that's not saying Indiana doesn't go down and score and then go for 2 anyways. But if you go for 2 and get it, especially with that momentum on your side, you're up 9 with 30 seconds, or a minute left, whatever it is.
See that? I didn't watch any of the Penn State game. I was a little disappointed in you for betting on Big Ten football when it hasn't been played yet this year.
Well, I mean, I got nothing else to lose.
I just never can trust Big Ten football. I know everybody loves it, but I watch very little college football, and I think Big Ten football is just a tad overrated.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the Big Ten, but I thought Penn State would run away with that game, but apparently not. What I don't know. Yeah, but going back to the NFL, this weekend was, I don't know, interesting. I think we saw a lot of things. I think we're starting to see divisions take shape. Obviously, the Bills have a 2-game lead in the East. Steelers and Ravens. Obviously, we knew. I still don't know anything about the Browns. You can tell me what their record is at 5-2 or whatever it is, but they played 2 good teams and got absolutely destroyed. And now with OBJ out for the year, that's a big loss for them because Landry really hasn't been doing anything for them.
So I heard this question today, and I'll ask you guys. I was watching McAfee, and he was doing his Tuesday interview with Aaron Rodgers. And they were talking about, is there a pressure? Like, you got a guy like OBJ who's now hurt, but he gets hurt. They started to play better from that point on. I mean, it was still early in the game, but the Browns and Mayfield, that's the best game Mayfield's had against anybody in probably ever. I mean, at one time, I think he had 18 or 19 straight completions to the receivers. So do you think you got a guy like Beckham on your team? You think it's tougher for Mayfield to feel like he needs to force that ball because you have that guy on your team, as opposed to going through your progressions and finding who's open?
It definitely got to be easier for Mayfield. And actually, I'll come back to the Browns, but Sunday we were talking about that with the Bills. Is I don't think Diggs ever got targeted till a couple minutes into the second quarter. And does Allen feel the pressure of, I haven't gotten the ball to Diggs yet. I need to force it his way. So I think going back to Mayfield, I think it definitely frees him up a little more because as soon as OBJ doesn't get the ball, he's going to be bitching about it. So it definitely frees him up, and it's got to feel a little easier for him.
And in a situation with Diggs too, I think what happened needed to happen. People are starting to figure Buffalo out. They can't run the ball right now. They're one of the worst running teams in the NFL, and I think they need to just make the switch to the Zach Moss. I think that kid, you need to just sink or swim. It's your ball kid, man. Make it happen, and basically Singletary be your in and out guy. You got to primarily give the ball to Moss. As far as receivers, you made a very good point. I felt like some of the throws were forced to Diggs because they've had that connection all year. But the bright side of that is everybody did see, like, okay, if you're going to double Diggs, I'm going to throw it to Beasley and he's going to tear you apart, because Beasley had a very good game. And even when John Brown out, Gabriel Davis is a good wide receiver. So I think at the positive of that is other teams are going to see, like, we can't just cover Diggs and shut him down. Like, Beasley's going to get the ball and be Beasley.
Yeah.
But what's going to open things up is they need to start running the ball better.
Yeah. And I saw Feliciano got activated today. So I guess hopefully a good sign for that. And I was shocked. They were sitting there Sunday watching a game, and buddy Mike, he's like, oh, Allen's over 300. I'm like, there's no fucking way he's over 300.
He had almost 400 yards total offense, didn't he?
I mean, but when you look back at it and think about it, they were moving the ball. Obviously, it just kept stalling down, inside the 30 or whatever it was. But it's crazy to think about. He threw for over 300. And obviously, I don't know what Beasley ended up, 130 yards or whatever Beasley ended up with. Yeah. So
when you're killing drives because you're stalling out and then dumb penalties, I mean, I thought some of the penalties were pretty cheap. Not because I'm a Bills fan, but I've seen it all year in every game I feel like I've watched. The pass interference call they called in the first quarter on the Buffalo to give the Jets the ball at like the 5-yard line, that was horseshit. That was a terrible call. Like, that was so Mickey Mouse. I don't know. It's an ugly win, but they got to get their shit together, because I really want to see them just put the Patriots in the dirt this weekend. And just, I'm so tired of listening about how Cam Newton. So first week we didn't hear about how great Cam Newton was. They handed that guy the MVP crown after week
yards.
1. Jeez.
He had 11 yards this week. Come on.
Yeah. Yeah, football is shaping up. I did also hear today that it is totally possible, because they have the extra spot in the playoffs this year. The entire NFC West could make the playoffs, the entire division, which is good and bad. Good for the NFC West. Good for other teams, because if they all make it, they're just going to beat each other up probably at some point, and somebody's not going to have to play them. So,
and I don't think, and so I know thing about the Rams, because they were talking about this last night during the game. They're 5-2 now, but 4 of those wins are against the NFC East. So they really haven't played anybody. They lost to San Fran. Obviously beat the Bears last night and lost to the Bills. So they really haven't played anyone in that division yet. So it'll be interesting how that division is going to be fun. I wish we don't hear as much about the West Coast, those Western divisions, but I think that division will be real exciting to watch coming down the stretch.
I've saying it for weeks that I thought the Rams were overrated. I also thought the Bears were overrated. I tried to give them the benefit of the doubt, because I kept looking at the numbers and reading all these articles how good the defense was, and then they made the Rams look really good last night. So
yeah.
I still think the Bears are frauds, and so are the Rams. We can put them both in that category, in my opinion. Let's move on to the World Series. Game 6 happening right now. When we come on here, Adam said he hopes for Game 7, but your prediction was Game 6.
I did say Dodgers in 6.
Yeah.
So I just like Game 7s.
Well, yeah. But I know what you want.
And I want to say Bueller Morton, but
so I've actually watched quite a bit of this World Series, and it's been extremely fun to watch. Game 4 might have been probably the best game so far in this series. But I want to talk about Game 2, because we talked about it last week, and I know Russ is probably going to agree with me on this. The Dodgers made a decision. I thought it could come back at some point, maybe to bite them. I don't know. But Game 2, why would you throw a bullpen game? Game 2. Like, what happened to the days of you had 4 quality starters, and that's who's going to throw your first 3 to 4 games, depending on how their outings went. And you went right out game 2 and threw a bullpen game and you lost. Like, why didn't they just throw Bueller?
I don't think. I agree with you, both of you, but I don't think the Dodgers think of Gonsolin as a bullpen guy.
But they said going into the game it was going to be a bullpen game.
They started him and he threw 1 or 2 innings purposely.
He threw like 2 innings.
Yeah, so that's why, and obviously we talked about this right before we started recording, and he hasn't been great this year, and obviously he's okay now. They're only down 1-0, but he gave up runs both games he pitched against the Braves. I think games 2 and 7 or whatever it was. But yeah, I just don't know with the Dodgers what they think if he's. I mean, Gonsolin's no slouch, I guess. But I think they expect him to get them 4 to 6 innings when he goes out.
Why wouldn't? I mean, I think I would take my chances throwing Bueller game 2 and having your odds of, after seeing him throw game 3, there was a good chance it could have been up 2-0 in a hurry. And now you're putting pressure on Tampa.
And I'll let Russ step in here in a second. Or is it because if you throw Bueller game 3, you got him game 7 in your pocket?
See, that's the problem. Is I as a manager, I couldn't think about what's going to happen in game 7.
Yeah, why are you playing for game 7?
Yeah, it's the World Series, man. Winner goes home, loser goes home, and I mean at that point, fuck the rest. Short notice. Like I'm sorry, this is it. Everybody goes home after this. So I think as an athlete, you'd have to say, hey, if I got to throw, I got to throw. Like if I got to pitch, I got to pitch, because it doesn't matter what happens at this point. And if you feel like you don't have it, then yeah, tell your manager, like, I don't have it. But I can't get into during the World Series, like, I can't pitch on 2 days rest or 3 days rest.
Yeah. And the one that sticks out at me, the reason this annoys me, because these bullpen games annoy the shit out of me. But the Dodgers have Dustin May, who in the regular season started 10 games. He was a starting pitcher in the regular season. Started 10 games, had a 2.57 ERA, 44 strikeouts to only 16 walks. He had a very good regular season in their starting rotation. And then the postseason rolls around and they put him in the bullpen. He's only started 1 game in the entire playoffs, and that was a bullpen game where they threw him 1 inning. So, to me, I assume Kershaw start game 1.
Yeah.
So you got Kershaw game 1. I have no problem that they bump Bueller to game 3. Why not start Dustin May game 2? So then you go Kershaw, May, Bueller, and if you wanted or needed to start Gonsolin in game 4, you could, or you go back to Kershaw. But they have these capable starters like Dustin May, who with no effort throws 100 miles an hour and could easily give you 5 innings, which even that's a ridiculous statement going back now comparing to 20 years ago when these starters would throw 7 or 8 innings. But I just don't understand. I know you need live electric arms in the bullpen, but you got a guy that started all year for you. He's struggling in the playoffs now, but you can make the argument that that's because he's a starting pitcher, and now you're putting him in these weird situations in the bullpen. So to me, I just don't know why they didn't come out with Kershaw, May, and Bueller games 1, 2, and 3 and go with the traditional starting pitcher.
And then figure it out from there.
Yeah.
I just looked, Gonsolin pitched an inning in a third game too.
Right.
Yeah, and I don't know how, with mentioning May, obviously I don't watch a ton of Dodgers games because they're usually on late, but I don't know, was he, because last night I think he threw a pitch at like 102.5, or I don't know, it was something ridiculous that he threw a pitch at. If he starts a game and he's just going to start like during the regular season, does he throw that hard all the time? I don't know if he's,
well, not that hard.
He set to like, right, if he sets to like 97, 98.
Yeah,
so,
he's still.
Yeah, and to your point, Russ, is he not pitching well because he's trying to overthrow? Because that's what he pitched, I think, once or twice, maybe 3 times in the Braves series. And each time he came in, he seemed like he was just trying to overthrow the ball.
Well, they've probably told him, hey, you're only throwing one inning. Go out there and throw absolute gas. I'm sure. In my opinion, it's the whole situation. Yeah, he's a starting pitcher who's used to having that traditional, starting pitchers will talk about having that hour and a half to warm up before a game, go through your routine. He's now taken out of that, has to go in the bullpen and warm up as a reliever. And they've probably, to your point, told him, hey, you're only throwing one inning or one trip through the lineup. You might as well leave it all out there on the mound. So he probably is overthrowing because they've instructed him to do so. And I don't know. I hate it. I really hate it.
I knew this was going to fire us up. I love it.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of bullpen games, and obviously I watch a lot of them this year because the Braves, well, they had to because they literally didn't have starters to throw. But that's a total not having starters to throw is an entirely different situation than having 5 starters and just not throwing them or throwing them, in innings. It's a totally different situation.
I remember when teams had like 5 starting pitchers, and then they'd have to pick 4 of them as their rotation for the playoffs and have one just kind of. Then you did throw one into the bullpen for middle relief or something.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The Dodgers let that left-handed Korean pitcher that went to Toronto,
Ryu.
Hyun Ryu, and they had another starting pitcher that they let walk last offseason. I shouldn't say they allowed because it takes 2 parties, right? But they purposely didn't offer these guys contracts because they had such depth at starting pitching. And to my knowledge, they don't have any substantial injuries or anything. So how can a team that allowed 2 starting pitchers to walk in free agency now is struggling to put together 3 starters for the playoffs? I just don't get that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and one of their starters, I think this is what you're talking about, Maeda, who went to the Twins. I think he led the AL in ERA this year.
Yeah, Kenta Maeda.
Obviously, that was part. Yeah, that was part of the Betts trade, but still, it's just one of those things. Obviously, they would don't get me wrong, you'd much rather have Betts right now than Maeda, but it's just it's another arm that they've had or groomed, which is crazy.
Yeah. Although, as I'm saying that, I'm realizing one of the arms they counted on was David Price that they got in the Betts trade, and he opted out for the year, which I won't question anybody for doing that. But if you're David Price, you got to be a little pissed you're sitting at home right now instead of potentially pitching, Game 6 of the World Series. But
or in his case, he would have been a Game 2, Game 3, or even Game 1.
Right. I think the whole thing I keep questioning as I go back to the Dustin May thing. This kid starting pitcher all year, and now you're like refusing to start him in the playoffs.
Why go away from what's worked for you?
Yeah, I don't
to get you to this point. Yeah, I hate the whole bullpen thing, and it actually ended up biting me because like you said, the Dodgers don't consider him a bullpen guy, and I didn't anticipate they were gonna be like, oh, we're gonna throw a bullpen game, and like I made my picks for the day based on the fact that the Dodgers and they were gonna throw a starting pitcher, and then like all of a sudden, because they take forever to release sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes, like who's gonna start, and then it came out like the next morning. And then I think it was that afternoon. That's when they were like, yeah, he's gonna be a bullpen. I'm like, they're throwing a bullpen game 2. Like, do that game 4 or 5. Like, if you know what I mean, you have to. But you mean to tell me you don't have enough starting pitchers to start a starter game 2?
Same thing. I'm just looking through the roster. That Julio Urias, the left-handed Dominican dude. No, Mexican. Excuse me. Same thing. Not trying to be funny. I don't want to. Same thing. He started 10 games in the regular season. A little bit worse numbers in May at 3.27 ERA, but point being, he had 10 starts in the regular season, and he has not started a game in the playoffs. So between May and Urias, they could have one of those guys start game 2 and give you 5 or 6 innings.
At least more than 1 in a third.
Or throw them both for the whole game. Have one of them throw 5 innings, the other throw 4. Get through the game with those 2 guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so let me ask you this. Go ahead. Finish up.
No. I was just going to say, maybe this is why I'm not a major league manager. But.
Maybe this is why you should be.
Yeah. You're thinking about this all wrong. So if you're the Dodgers, obviously they're down 1-0 now. If this is a tie game or they're up, it's 7th inning. Do you bring Buehler in to try to close that down with 3 innings left, or do you? And then you could, yeah.
No, I don't.
Even if you have the lead.
Yeah, he's to me. Yeah, you want to do everything to win, but he's the one guy that probably can't throw tonight. You can't. If something goes wrong, and then you have no options for tomorrow, that's worse than blowing the game tonight, and at least having Buehler, who you could argue might be the best pitcher in this series, throwing tomorrow. So,
and you got 2 starters sitting in your bullpen.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, A, you don't want to use him up, and B, he's spent his career building games up, not closing them out. So you're at the end of the World Series, you're going to put in a guy that's not used to closing and finishing out games. I mean, it just seems like you've got guys that are specialists at that. Why are you going to – I don't know. It just seems like that's so far out in left field to pull him in at that point.
Yeah.
You see it in games like 6 or 7, if games, like or more so 7, you see that, but because I think it's literally like winner goes home, loser goes home. So you're going to do everything you can to throw.
Right. So you could go. The only reason I'm thinking is so I don't know if I do it with a 1-run lead. If I have a 2 or 3-run lead, I think I'm bringing Buehler in the 8th. But if he isn't able to close that down, you can throw Urias tomorrow, and then you can bring Kershaw in after on 3 days rest.
I was just going to ask, what Kershaw didn't throw games 5,
or 2 days. Oh, it's 2 days rest, right?
Kershaw threw game 5. So he threw 2 days ago. He threw 5+ innings. I would bring Kershaw in tonight before I bring.
So maybe okay. So maybe Kershaw, because obviously, right? This season's obviously entirely different. They haven't, Kershaw hasn't thrown 250 innings this year. Mm. So you're right. Yeah. So you haven't thrown as much as you normally do in a season. So I think those guys. I think you can throw them a little more with this. Tomorrow being the absolute last game of the season, or obviously it could be tonight. So yeah. I think one of those guys you got to bring in tonight if you have the lead.
If you're up, but if you're up, if you're down like they are right now, going into late innings, pitching's clearly not your problem. If you're down 1-0, so
yeah. No, I agree that you bring one of them in. Like I said, in my opinion, you can't screw yourself in Game 7 situation. As much as I hate bullpen games, I do not want to go into Game 7 with a bullpen game. So to me, Buehler's the only guy that's off limits tonight. I would be willing to throw Kershaw in innings 8 and 9 tonight, especially since you don't go on sentiment, but he's kind of been that guy that's been beaten up in the playoffs. A lot of that has to do with the Astros. You can make the argument then their cheating scandal. It'd also be kind of cool to see Kershaw close out the World Series win.
Yep.
But so, I bring Kershaw tonight and save Buehler for tomorrow if Game 7 happens.
So that's a good transition. Another question I have for you guys. Obviously there's been talk, last 5 years, Kershaw struggles in the playoffs. Has what he's done already in the postseason? I would say I know Russ is on the same page I am. Kershaw is probably one of the, I don't know, I'm going to throw a number out, probably top 10, top 15 pitchers of all time. He's very good. Obviously he struggled a little bit in the postseason. Does what he's done so far help alleviate what they say he struggled with, or does he have to win a World Series to kind of stop that?
I mean, he's 2-0 in a World Series.
He's 2-0 in a series.
Has he lost any games in the playoffs? I mean, he's been pretty solid throughout the playoffs. He definitely has not lived up to that. He's that he's been like a poor performer in the playoffs, like they claim in previous years. I think Russ just kind of mentioned it. I mean, I think if he goes 2-0 in this World Series and they don't win the World Series, you can say, hey, Kershaw showed up this year in the playoffs. He showed up in the World Series. And then, in the same breath, he didn't show up in previous years. And then you might get the rebuttal, like Russ just said. Well, you also played the Dodgers, who in their whole cheating scandal, and you can always throw that in there.
I mean, for my money, he's the best pitcher of my adult generation watching baseball. When you look at his whole body of work, he is clearly a first ballot Hall of Famer. I mean, a few seasons ago, when he was about to set the record for like most strikeouts with less than 10 walks or something to start a season. He had something stupid like 160 strikeouts to like 8 walks or something. He's the best pitcher of my generation that I've watched. There's probably some people that would argue he's, top 3 best left-handed pitchers ever, probably behind Koufax and somebody else I'm forgetting.
Tom Glavine, obviously.
Randy Johnson.
Yeah. Top 5, we'll say. Does a World Series help him? Yeah, absolutely it does. His postseason struggles, yes, he's struggled, but it doesn't tarnish my overall view of him, I guess, if that makes sense. Anytime you win a ring versus playing your whole career without a ring, certainly it helps. But
yeah, and I would say I'm just trying to look up when his contract actually ends with the Dodgers. He's 32, so it's not like he's 37.
Yeah, he's
next year. I think 2021 is his last year right now.
I mean, I would think he's still got a couple good years left in him. I don't envision him in any other uniform, but that isn't necessarily realistic these days, the way sports are played. But
right, chases money.
So it's crazy. He's $93 million contract extension is what he signed.
Yeah, as I said,
I'm trying to find the years to make sure that it was
the money. The money thing is probably not the issue for him. He has been paid handsomely. If anything, I could see the opposite, where he would say, "You know what? I want to be a Dodger for life, and I'll sign a 1-year extension for $1 million or something like that."
Right.
Yeah. So
I think
his contract is up after next year.
So he had a few years before some of these mega contracts came in. He had a few years where I believe he was the highest paid player in baseball in the early 2010 decade. I think
it was close. I'm trying to see if I can find past contracts here.
Yeah. I think there were a few years he was making 25 to 30 million.
He in 2014 he signed a 7-year, $215 million for just over $30 million a year. So he had to have been close to the top.
Yeah, so he's chasing legacy, and he wants to go down as one of the Dodgers' greatest ever. I don't think we'll see him in a different uniform. Certainly not about money,
right?
Unless he's made Mike Tyson decisions with his $215 million. But
give away a Bentley.
I got a little different perception of him than Mike Tyson.
Tiger King Part 2.
He's close to being over $400 million career earnings.
It's decent.
Not bad.
That's all right.
College basketball, Adam, you want to throw us with an update?
Yeah, we got college basketball starting November 25th. Some conferences have started releasing schedules in the past couple of days. Big 12 released. The Big 12 is the first Power 5 conference to release their schedule, so they're looking close. And there's some rules on number of games. It's like 24 games, plus you can play in like those preseason tournaments. So they've limited the number of games so that they can make sure that they get everything in by March, because they have already kind of put some bubble feelers out there. And they've trademarked Battle in the Bubble, I think is what they're calling it. So they're kind of ready to go. And I know Orlando is actually hosting 8 of the, obviously they have those preseason small tournaments throughout the country and, everywhere in November. So I think Orlando's actually hosting 8 of those, so the teams don't have to travel too far. And obviously they've got the bubble set up already, basically you can say from the NBA. So they're kind of hosting a lot of those. So it'll be interesting, but I'm obviously being a big college basketball fan. I'm excited for the end of November. Usually it would be starting next week. So it's not too much of a delay on their part. And they'll play roughly probably 8 to 10 games less during the regular season than they would normally play. So I think teams would be happy.
Usually the first 3 weeks you play like the shitty, I don't want to call them shitty, but they feel like somewhat meaningless tournaments that, really don't matter. So if you start 3 weeks late and play the games that matter, that's what all that matters.
Yeah. I think most of the big conferences are going to like 18 or 20 game regular season schedules. So
yeah, usually first weekend you get like Duke warming up against like Bob's Fireman Academy or something like that, and it's 112 to 14 at halftime.
Dude, that's what they schedule in January too. That's just Duke.
All right, you guys want to move on to, and we'll have to come up with some stuff for college basketball. I have some ideas, probably closer to like March Madness and stuff, but.
I have something real quick before we move on to stars. I sent it to you in the text messages. It's a friend from, more of an acquaintance, but sort of a friend from school.
Taylor's got buddies.
Yeah, at one point in my life, I had friends. Malik Taylor for the Green Bay Packers scored his first touchdown. We had accounting and public speaking and whatnot together.
Did he copy off you?
No, he didn't actually.
No, Taylor copied off him.
I probably should have. He's gotten a lot further than I have, clearly.
He has different talents, Taylor.
I guess. Yeah, go. I just thought that was important to throw out there because that's a huge.
No, it's cool.
Nope.
Yeah. Dude, that's another thing. College football. I feel like it's back. I feel like it's some good games.
Same thing. They're playing like they're not playing the bullshit games. Like, let's just play the games that matter.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to stars. I have 3 stars this week and a dud.
Ooh.
I can't get away from this dud stuff. So whoever wants to go first, go ahead and ramble off your first star.
I guess I'll start.
Oh, okay.
I just feel bad. I've been stealing your stars lately, but I'm going to give a shout out to DK Metcalf. In this age of players flopping and putting in no effort, Metcalf pretty much did the opposite. So if you follow basically anybody in any sports outlet on social media, you saw his hustle play. Buda Baker. Russell Wilson started running after him and gave up because he thought it was a lost cause. Then you see Metcalf going like Usain Bolt right past him. So tackled him and actually saved him 4 points because Arizona ended up with a field goal instead of that touchdown to end the half. So I don't know.
Arizona didn't even score.
I thought they kicked field goal there.
No, they went for on 4th down and didn't get it.
They didn't score.
Okay. Either way, in this age of flops and minimal effort, it was nice to see a guy going balls to the wall on a play like that.
I'll go.
You want? All right.
Before you steal a star. I'm going to go. My third star of the week is going to be Khabib. Might be one of the best we've ever seen on the ground. Congrats on retirement, if that's what you choose to do. I'm not sure I will entirely believe we've seen the end of you. I know you've got a lot of money, but money will bring you back. So
got paid 10 sheets
million
for that fight Saturday.
Plus pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Is that what it ended up? I saw it was like $6 million and then plus whatever pay-per-view was or something like that.
I read 10 million plus pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Okay.
Either way, it was a payday.
Yeah. I'm going third star, Kyler Murray. Threw for 360, 3 touchdowns, had a pick, and also ran for 67 and a touchdown in the win against Seattle Sunday night, which was one hell of a game to watch.
Yeah, that was a fun game.
So Kyler Murray, 3rd star.
My star of the week goes to Boston Scott for his game-winning touchdown and what I consider to be a game of the duds, which for some reason was completely compelling to me to watch those two teams play. Funny enough, we got the star and the dud out of that game, so wait for that. But it was exciting to watch it come down in a game like that, to come down to the last 30 seconds and see a great reception for a touchdown earns my star of the week.
So I want to add to your star of the week. There was a prop bet for him that night, and it was over. Oh shit! It's over there. It's written down. It was like over 75 or 74.5 yards rushing and receiving. And he was at 74 yards before that play. So that 18-yard pass to win the game pushed that bet to the over, the prop bet to the over.
Nice.
Wait, so Taylor, are you pumped for the Eagles Cowboys Sunday night?
If it's on, I'll probably be excited about it. Someone's got to put it on for me to be excited.
All right, my second star of the week, we've already talked about Phil Hawes, UFC middleweight debut with that 18-second knockout of Jacob Malkoun. It's funny how sometimes those quick fights like that, those quick knockouts are just as exciting as watching a longer fight. So Phil Hawes put on a show in just 18 seconds. My second star.
My second star of the week is Brett Phillips of the Tampa Bay Rays. Game 4, he had his first ever postseason hit, and it happened to be a game winner, which spun the game into pure chaos, which I think we've all talked about in the past few podcasts. I'm a firm believer in getting on base, putting ball in play. That's how you win playoff baseball games. And that's exactly what happened, and it won him a game. You never know what happens when you put the ball in play. So Brett Phillips on his first postseason hit just happened to be a game winner. Don't have to get out of the stadium to win a game.
Yeah, you see that a lot. These two teams are playing great defensively, and then it's just one defensive miscue cost them the game.
Yep.
Just like that. You got to be almost perfect during the postseason.
Base runners on, throw a pitch out of rhythm, and just put the ball in play. That's what won you games in the postseason.
My second star, staying with the Cardinals Seahawks game, Tyler Lockett, 15 catches, 200 yards, and a page out of Russ's book, 3 touchdowns. Unbelievable game. So Tyler Lockett, second star.
My first star, Corey Seager. So far through 5 games in this World Series, he, in my opinion, is the front runner for MVP. 5 games, he's hitting .471 with a .609 on base percentage, and he's hit 2 home runs. So he is tearing it up. There's been some talk over the last couple of years about the Dodgers potentially needing an upgrade at shortstop, and I think some of that was because he had Tommy John surgery. They've been linked to like Francisco Lindor and whatnot, and he's easily a top 5 shortstop in the majors. I don't know why he's proving they don't need anybody else, because in my opinion, he's a front runner for World Series MVP so far, tearing it up.
My first star is going to come as a shocker to all of you. It is the punter for the Rams, Johnny Hecker. The guy had 5 punts last night that pinned the Bears inside the 10-yard line and proved the value of a quality punter and special teams in the NFL. It pinned them back. They never moved the ball, and I felt like that was a big difference in the game last night. Is starting inside the 10 is not easy. It doesn't matter who you are. If you can't move the ball, a little bit in his first couple of plays, you're just kind of stuck. You don't have a choice but to punt. And on top of him pinning them, the way he kicks the ball, I don't know if you guys noticed this, he actually kicks it sideways so it spins. And it takes a set of balls to do this, because if he misses that ball by a little bit, it's probably a 15-yard punt and goes straight out of bounds. But he turns it sideways and drops it like you're kicking it at a picnic and just hits bombs. So my first star is Johnny Hecker.
They call it a watermelon kick, I think is what they call it.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. It's crazy to watch him do it. But obviously, those guys are just practicing all the time. But yeah, he had a hell of a game last night. My first star was already mentioned, but that fast motherfucker DK Metcalf. I'm giving him first star for the fucking A+ effort. It was that. I don't know if you guys saw the end zone that Buda Baker was running to. I don't know if you guys saw that view of the play, but they had that. Metcalf was like in the middle of the field when that ball got picked, and he fought through like 5 guys and just it was
Blows the
incredible.
distance.
And like he tackled him at like the 8, so it's probably 92 yards. I mean, he was flying, but as Russ said, as Russell Wilson was running, he almost kind of like looked and was like, "Oh, where did he come from?" Because it just, it seemed like it didn't matter.
So I want to take you back to the draft, Adam, 2 years ago when he got drafted. You and I were texting, and I said the Bills need to draft. It doesn't matter now because they've got wide receivers. But do you remember you and I talking about them being drafted? I said, I can't believe the Bills. They need to take Metcalf. This kid's a freak. And not just the Bills. Everybody passed on this kid. And then when the Seahawks got him, I was like, this kid's going to be a stud. I mean, he was nasty in college.
Yeah. He's what, 6'4", 6'5"?
He's built like a linebacker.
Someone tweeted, said, I got to see. So I have obviously, I don't know how I'm going to get this in play, but we got to try to figure this out.
To Tyreek Hill.
Someone tweeted that the Tyreek Hill against Metcalf racing, but turn this into a charity thing because obviously we already want to see Allen and Mahomes.
Yeah.
Throwing distance. There's got to be a couple other competitions some guys can challenge themselves to. I think that'd be fun to watch.
Did you not see that, Taylor?
I saw that. Yeah, I did.
Oh, okay. All right.
Really impressive, but I only saw the cuts of it where it was just a couple seconds. I couldn't see any of the whole field because that's really impressive.
So before Taylor gets to his dud, I want to throw mine out there. And then
if you steal my dud, I'm going to be fucking pissed.
I doubt I stole your dud. I'm going with another punter who did the opposite. Yeah. Joel Velasquez, the punter from Boise State, who kicked one. Let me get these numbers right. He kicked it negative 38 yards. Kicked it backwards, and they got down to the 21-yard line. He caught it in his up kick, and it went behind him. So,
like a Phil Mickelson right over his shoulder.
Negative 38-yard punt. That's not good for the stats. That's my dud.
Wait, before Taylor gets to his dud here, did you guys see? I think I retweeted it, but the Texas Tech kicker or punter, kicked one from his own 2, and it went through the other end zone.
110 yards.
Dude, it took like one hop.
Yeah, it was like an 80-yard kick. It's like an 80 or 83-yard kick. It flew.
It was crazy.
So by now, I think almost everybody has probably seen it. But Daniel Jones gets the dud of the week. He was so close to being a star of the week. If you haven't seen already, he was going 21.5 miles an hour. He was flying. And if anybody's actually the real dud of the week, I think it might be his 2 left feet. Because to fall at the 8-yard line, I mean, at least he had redemption to score a touchdown and make it so it all went away. But when it happened, I don't know if you guys were on my team, but when I saw it happen, I said, I hope they don't score. I hope this turns into a huge kerfuffle.
I also read that the speed they clocked him at was actually like the 5th fastest or something like that.
Yeah.
Faster than all these running backs, right?
Yep. They said it was like 21.23 miles an hour, and I think they said Tyreek Hill's fastest speed this year is like 21.26. It was almost as fast as Tyreek Hill's highest speed this year.
Dude, yeah, and he was faster than Lamar Jackson too, I believe, by like half a mile per hour. But
too bad his upper body was going faster than his legs. That broke the record.
Dude, and that was like the second longest run in NFL history for a quarterback. If he would have scored, it would have been the longest, but it was like 3 yards shy of the record or something.
Well, remember we were talking a couple weeks ago about was it Cam Newton setting the rushing record for the Patriots or something? That one run would have done it right there.
Yeah.
Right.
75
with the
yards for the
trip-
Patriots.
Even with the trip, he would have set the new Patriots
Yeah.
rushing record.
And that run right there is an example why I was surprised Newton set that record, that it hadn't been done before, because it only takes one random
One breakaway.
play like that. Yeah.
Yep.
Dude, I couldn't. So I didn't watch. I had no interest in watching that game. But when I saw the highlight, I saw the thing that said he ran 80 yards or whatever the heck it was. When they ran the play, I was like, how the hell did this guy go 80 yards? But he turned that corner and there was literally nobody there. Like I don't know what the Eagles were doing, what they planned on doing, but
Yeah.
clearly
They didn't
nobody
plan on
wanted
him
to
running
play
the ball.
defense.
They didn't know what they're doing either. So.
All right, gentlemen. Well,
Oh, never mind. That was your dud week.
yeah.
Mhm.
So that's it, gentlemen. We are recording tonight early, so I'll probably get this up hopefully early. And
Oh, LeBron still sucks.
Well, that's a
Had to
given.
get that in.
next week at this time, I will be a dad, so we'll figure out plans for next week.
Hopefully, my goodness,
She's getting induced on the second.
it's gonna be like the scene from the Alien where the baby just.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Wow.
Dude, you say induced on the second. So did my wife, and it was like 2 days later.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Might be doing a podcast from the hospital room.
Do you
All
want
right,
us to
gentlemen.
help or?